Welcome back, Red Spotter. Let's here on the Red Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Alexis J. Soto, joined today by Peter Martinez. This is, of course, the podcast where we talk about movie news, reviews, all the stuff of the film industry that we love to get into. And yes, it is also another week in the long-standing celebration now of the COVID pandemic, as it were. You know, the funny, well, not maybe funny is the wrong word, the eerie thing, I think, is a better word for it, about the occasion of this recording. We are recording on Tuesday, August 25th of 2020. This podcast, since we've started the lockdown here in California, is now entering officially the 25th week. So on the 25th day of August, we're recording the 25th podcast in a row to, I guess, commemorate this quarantine and this pandemic.
Illuminati confirmed.
Absolutely. And you know, we have a lot of wonderful stories to get to. This was actually one of those weeks where there's some exciting news when it comes to future films that are coming to us in the forms of DC Fandome, you know, trailers from the Snyder Cut, Matt Reeves' The Batman, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman. A lot of that stuff. We'll also be talking about an internal debate, it seems as if film critics are having amongst themselves about whether or not or how to cover films in the age of a pandemic, as well as initial reviews for Christopher Nolan's Tenet, and a lot of drama that continues to come from that movie, it seems. So that'll be here on Red Spotlight number 262. Of course, we should mention, and it is very important, so, you know, Peter, when we started doing these shows, when the pandemic and lockdown subsequently started, we were having a conversation about whether or not the total number of fatalities had reached the total population of our town, which was around 30 or so thousand. At that point, there had been 22,000 people who unfortunately passed away from COVID-19. And as always, I want to keep people updated on that, not to depress people, but to, you know, to make sure that we don't become numb, as unfortunately a lot of Americans are, to the number of people who have died. So in the span of 25 weeks, we went from 22,000 Americans dead from COVID-19 to the latest official number is 178,000.
Yep. That's a number.
In 25 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned to Peter, I am feeling a certain kind of way today. And just to give, I think, listeners a fair warning about what's to come, I will put timestamps, as I always do with these new shows, in the description. That way, if people so wish to skip to other parts of the episode, by all means, they're welcome to if they'd like.
Take advantage of it.
You're saying, Peter?
I remember from the very beginning, what's his name? Our current president.
Oh, the Lord President?
Fire Lord had said that he would consider it a success if he could keep the deaths between 100,000 and 200,000. He's not going to. Even that immense number of dead, you would think, like, how ridiculous, considering it a success. And you know he gave himself that high of a number because he's an idiot and he knew he'd fuck up. And he probably never dreamed that they would, nor cared, but he never thought that they would ever reach the 200,000. But he's most likely going to hit that 200,000 before he leaves office.
Just so we're clear here, the original projection for the end of August, which is coming up in a few days. In fact, by the time, I would assume that when this episode drops on the next Sunday, there would have officially been 180,000 lives. So that's keeping in with the projections. I mean, that would only mean there are 20,000 people left to go to hit that mark.
Yeah.
We're going to have a discussion later on about where we are with that, because a lot of industries are now getting into that pattern again, how they were like in late June, early July of, well, the numbers are down, the number of infections are down. I think we can try this time and we can open it up. Unfortunately, we're now in the season where public schools are opening. In Florida, they opened in August 15th, 10 days ago. 9,000 new cases of coronavirus in children in a 15-day period. 9,000 kids infected with COVID-19 in Florida alone. You know what also came out this week? In terms of like how people in general are feeling about the death toll, because quite frankly, that hasn't been asked at all in a poll until now, 25 weeks into the pandemic, about how do you feel about the number of losses. Most people are, of the mind of, well, it is pretty fucking unacceptable. But if you wanted to know, 57% of Republicans asked in the survey, CBS YouGov, said it was perfectly acceptable that 180,000 people have died. And that tracks, quite frankly. 75% of Republicans were asked in a separate poll this past weekend whether or not they thought that where we are right now was better than where it was 4 years ago as a country. And they said yes.
The suffering is the point. It's a death cult. I refuse in any way to view these people in any serious way, as if they have anything to offer this country or anyone.
They do have something to offer. It's called death, apparently.
They are a danger to themselves. They are a danger to this country. They're a danger to everyone around them. They do not care about you.
And I mean, not only the public schools, but also colleges are opening back up. And guess what? Apparently all over the country, there seems to be this rampant issue of students partying and having to shut them down, then also suspend those students if the schools themselves don't shut down in the following weeks because of an excess number of COVID-19, as well as the fact that a new report that just came out today may suggest that the original guidelines for social distancing may in fact have not been effective. You don't say. The guidelines by which many of these businesses, if not public institutions, are using to supposedly keep you safe. And, as far as our local community, we have been one of those places where we've been flirting with opening and then been forced to shut down. The fascinating internal politics is that there's a city in our county that is fighting with the county health department, while the county itself submitted a request to open and they got clearance. And now we're reopening with phase 2. Because we got, supposedly after, a month, 2 months, the rate of infection down to 8%.
Did we?
Evidently.
Okay.
So nothing's really changed with COVID. In fact, I think you can tell, at least from my attitude, that I'm fairly pessimistic about where this is going to go. In fact, if it ain't already too obvious where we are with it. But, there are really important questions that need to be asked about our country, about the people of this country. And considering the fact that the two major parties have held conventions in the last 2 weeks, and none of the questions that I think are pertinent have been brought up at all. -1, I think. One pretty strong question of authoritarianism. I don't know. I'm just getting a dark, dark sense about what's to come. It's not looking good at all. Peter, you go first. You want to mention anything that you've been watching this week? It's been kind of a weird week, at least for me anyway. I'm trying to think what. No, it's not coming except for Captain Marvel. We did a commentary with David Francisco, because that was the one movie we hadn't done in last year's big MCU roundup. Yeah. So what I did was I was trying to prep for the show, and so I listened to the audio commentary with the directors of Captain Marvel. And there was very sparse details about the creative decisions that were made. But there was some, I feel, pretty surprising elements, and I revealed those on David and I's commentary, that I feel kind of explain how things went wrong with the characterization of Carol Danvers and other elements that kind of work but are ultimately a waste of potential. Though it is one of those interesting like commentaries, like we are crapping on the film from a creative standpoint, but David and I enjoy the movie. Frankly, I mean, so it's one of those weird ones where there are some positives. It's not a complete crap fest, but it is a pretty, I think, damning indictment about how that movie was handled. I think you'd find it interesting.
Captain Marvel.
Pretty much. But it's still 1,000 times better than Ant-Man and the Womp Womp and The Rise of Skywalker. Because those movies make me feel a different kind of way. Let me tell you about that. In the worst way fucking possible. So I guess this will go take us back into the seriousness of it. I'm sorry. I apologize. Again, you can skip ahead if you want. So the other thing that I watched, and I think you and I both saw elements of this, was the Democratic National Convention.
Oh, God.
With their...
I mean... I technically did too.
Yes,
but I wasn't gonna count it.
I spent a significant part of my week watching that, so I feel like I have to, and I also want to talk about that. Again, people, I understand if people don't want to listen to this. That's why timestamps exist. You can skip ahead if you'd like. You're welcome. But I want to talk about this with you because I feel like you're the only one that can kind of sort of understand what I'm feeling like. In fact, even share some of those feelings. Full disclosure, both Peter and I are of the mind that the GOP conservative Republicans are stepping closer and closer into being neo-fascists, if not there already. And this president is beginning to practice authoritarianism in full force with him sabotaging the post office. So by that metric alone, I want to make it clear that we are advocates and endorse Biden. If you're in a swing state, please vote. Vote in general, but please vote for Joe Biden so we can get this madman out of the White House and we can get back to our fucking lives. Okay? Can we agree with that? We're good with that. Obviously. And I want to say that out front because I'm going to say some things that I know people are going to take the wrong way. I think for the most part, the Democrats' convention, save for one element, was an embarrassment. As far as like where the direction that this party is taking. I felt kind of invisible watching that convention for the most part because half of the speakers were literal Republicans from the Bush administration. Some of them war criminals. Neocons that, marched us to the drum of war. And the main message that I got was the vapid stuff of, our allies are laughing at us. And we need someone strong. That way they'll stop laughing at us. I will say, I think the strongest speakers, most I think of the keynote speakers had the theme of from Bernie to the Obamas to Biden. Trump isn't a normal president. He is an authoritarian. We need him gone. So on that level, I think it was a success. I wish, however, that they were more forceful because I'm just looking at the speeches that are coming out of the RNC this week, and I gotta say, they are no holds barrel, like full force, just calling Democrats fucking communists with hatred in their hearts and in their eyes. And I just wish we had some of that anger and rage at the Democratic convention directed towards them because, in reality, it is the conservative party that has led this country to ruin time and time again. And yet they're still, like, I think too kind to them for the most part. The only progressive voices in the Democratic Party, in the convention, I should say, was an 8-minute address from Sanders, which I think was effective, and then also AOC for a procedural moment for 60 some seconds or so.
Democrats still believe in this myth of the moderate Republican. They truly believe that this moderate Republican exists and that they see through the bullshit that is Donald Trump. And boy, oh boy, are they reachable within the Democratic Party and da-da-da-da-da. This mythical moderate Republican does not exist. Doesn't it? Not in any real statistical way, in a big way in which you can really pull from their voters. Like, I really think that at least that's the way it comes off with listening to a lot of these establishment Democrats speak, and you look at the convention they put together, they really believe they can, like, pull half of the Republicans away and just steal all these moderate Republicans and bring them into the Democratic Party. The number of moderate Republicans that exist is maybe like 10%.
I feel like all of them were at the convention already speaking. All the ones that are attainable.
Yeah,
it seems like.
All the ones that are attainable, you already gave them speaking spots. Like, Donald Trump has all-time high approval ratings for the Republican Party.
I mean, to be clear, over 90% of Republican voters are with him no matter what. That's what the polling says. So I think that in and of itself destroys this theory that you can bring half of them over to your side, or any number that matters.
This idea that there is just this genuine good portion of conservatives that are ready to, walk away from the party and become Democrats and endorse Joe Biden, they just don't exist. Not in any real way that matters. Like you said, all the ones that exist are already spoke at the Democratic Convention. And what sucks is Republicans are, again, falling into fascism, and they're falling hard and quickly. They didn't even have a agenda. Their agenda was just follow Trump at this year's convention. Like, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. The official party platform, there was none at the GOP.
But Democrats, they are just so set in this idea of, like, the moderate. We will pull over the moderate conservative. And they seem to take for granted, like, okay, we already have progressives in our corner. And no, like, the way that conservatives continue to win is they fire up their base. They make their base excited to want to go out and vote, and then they do. And that's how they win, despite the fact that conservatives absolutely make up, or at least Republicans, make up a minority within this country. They're a pretty small percentage of the overall country. They still are able to attain power. And why is that? Because they get excited. I used to think that we can't be able to address the Republicans until, progressives and more left-leaning people took over the Democratic Party, and then you'd be able to properly address conservatives. And it's actually the other way around. And I think it's pretty clear now. You can't address the neoliberal wing of the party until you address Republicans. You have to deal with the runaway fascism in the Conservative Party first before you can really do anything within the Democratic Party. Because until you do, people are just going to be scared of Trump. You know what I mean? People are just gonna go, yeah, everything that you said sounds good, but I'm just afraid of the guy that's currently in the White House. So we just need to go with the moderate, you know? So at the end of the day, both are utterly disappointing. I feel both sides, the Democrat and the Republican, but one is infinitely better.
It's not a hard choice at all. I don't want people to construe it as if I'm having a hard time voting for the Democrats. I'm just so disappointed because, you know, from a whole different bunch of factors, I think it was kind of a disaster. It was just a bunch of old washed up has-beens on both sides of the aisle at that convention. You know, for all the talk of, you know, Bernie and Biden leading the polls, all these old white guys, the entire primary, that's all you pretty much got at the convention. All the new young faces, where were they at? What happened to this being a diverse party? It just wasn't on display at all. And of course, the same people who were criticizing then are applauding it now. You had people on there like Governor John Kasich, Secretary of State Colin Powell, Michael Bloomberg, and who was viciously repudiated on the debate stages earlier this year, and yet gave him a primetime speaking slot at the convention.
You could go maybe, because it would be one thing if he then turned around and he gave a shit ton of money to the DNC, but he didn't even do that.
It's really concerning that in the first night of the RNC, there were two things that were mentioned that the DNC never addressed in their convention last week. But in the first night, one speaker mentioned ending the endless wars, and another said fighting for the working class, the working man. Mm-hmm. What has happened to the Democratic Party where that was none of that was mentioned at the convention in the DNC? There was nothing. No one mentioned the working class. They don't care about the working class. They didn't mention ending the endless wars. They don't want to end the endless wars. And on top of that, all of the speeches were America is great. We need to be better than this. Joe Biden is a nice guy. No policy. Oh, authoritarianism is bad. But they didn't give you, there's a platform that was well thought out of, and it is there, even though a lot of progressives voted against it. It's the only platform you're going to get from any party at this point, it looks like. But none of the speakers cared to even address any of the bullet points of that platform. They're right in that we can't even get to that until we address the crazy right people. Of course, I understand. But I just think that people respond more to being given an idea of what you're going to do. And yet, scarily enough, it just seems, I think what was so dark about that is all the stuff that was happening behind the scenes at the DNC. No one even mentioned even like the simplest of thing about adding a public option to Obamacare. They were just saying strengthening Obamacare.
They're already backing away from a public option.
They're already backing away from a public option, which is what they committed to in the primary. Joe Biden said this past week that he will not raise taxes to anyone who makes under $400,000. What?
What a stupid fucking. And again, they always play the game on conservatives' terms. So instead of, because they always do this, conservatives will feign caring about like the deficit, but they don't give a shit because they get into office and they do all these tax cuts and they don't pay for them and they drive the country into the ground. And then the Democrats come in and they're like, oh no, well, I know how we'll appeal to the moderate conservative. We'll talk about the deficit. and how we're not going to spend a dime on anything. And
Ted Kaufman, one of Biden's chief advisors, even mentioned, and it was a big thing in the press this past week, that they were already signaling that they weren't going to spend anything, that the deficit's too high. Are you kidding me?
Unbelievably stupid. And I guarantee you, at the same time they say that, the second that Biden's in office, the next bill that has to come through to increase military spending will go through, and everyone will vote for it, and no one will even bat an eye. It won't be questioned endlessly like healthcare is in the media, because the media does this too. They'll be like, but how are we going to pay for healthcare? How do we pay for healthcare? Oh, this sounds great, but how do you pay for it? How do you pay for it? How do you pay for it? How many times have they said that every time they increase the military budget? 50 times that of like every other country.
Rahm Emanuel, who has
no one should
been
listen to Rahm Emanuel.
No one should listen to him, but he gets paid by ABC News to give political commentary. So yay, there's that. But he has already signaled that the direction of the party is we are going to appeal to future former Republicans, and that's our next base. This comes off a very interesting point where, the infrastructure of this political party, the Democrats, are all very much of the neoliberal persuasion and want to go in the direction that Rahm is suggesting. However, when it comes to a lot of the recent primaries that have been held, a lot of progressive Justice Democrats are winning in those seats. And I have to wonder that there are going to be some pretty loud fights coming in the coming years, because I don't know what they think they have coming, but they seem as if it's going to be just fine, and they're going to walk all over the AOC wing of the Democratic Party. I don't know how that's going to work out if more and more of them keep coming to Congress.
Well, that's why.
And I should also, let me just say, I should also mention that why this just felt so wrong is that, again, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, out of nowhere endorsed Joe Kennedy, a conservative primary challenger to progressive Ed Markey in the Massachusetts race for the Senate, because Ed Markey attacked the name of the Kennedy dynasty. He attacked Kennedy for having his family's millions poured into this race. And because of that, she went out of her way to endorse Joe Kennedy, which they had previously pledged that they were not going to endorse primary challengers to incumbents, which Ed Markey is. And a lot of people were enraged by that, and it did seem to cross a line. So there's a lot of things that are happening right now with the Democratic Party that it's just, there is a fight coming ahead. There is a real hard fight coming.
I agree. And that's why, but see, that's a fight I much rather have. I don't want to fight Trump. I don't want to fight Republicans. I don't want to have to fight to stop the country from falling into authoritarianism and from everything falling apart, from his just extreme incompetence. I'd rather be fighting with Democrats in power and trying to push them to say, hey, you said you promised a public option. You better at least bring me a public option, I mean, a public option should have happened in the original healthcare bill in 2010, but who killed it? Rahm Emanuel. The same person we just mentioned. He was the White House chief of staff. Rahm Emanuel has never met a fight that he hasn't immediately run away from. He might be the worst, politician ever. He's truly the worst.
I mean, he's effective at ruining things. I'll give him that.
Yeah. But I guess my thing is, I much rather have the fight over public option or strengthening Obamacare rather than just stripping away all healthcare rights and then just sucks to suck, go on living. I rather have a fight about a climate change plan, which Joe Biden has a climate change plan. It's pretty good,
Yeah.
But I'd rather have a fight about strengthening that and making sure that passes rather than Donald Trump repealing every EPA protection that Obama put in the previous 8 years.
Just because.
Just because. What's important is to pick your enemy correctly, I think. And I much rather have the Democratic Party be my enemy than the Republican Party. Because I can work with the Democratic Party. Because the fight is over solutions, not whether the problem even exists.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck between both scenarios suck, and I vastly prefer one scenario over the other.
That's the point. The Republican Party is slipping further and further into QAnon conspiracy territory.
It's a death cult. It's
what happens. I don't see that party all of a sudden going to a more sensible candidate like a John Kasich.
No.
They want red meat.
They're going to have someone further to the right of Trump, but is able to put on a smile and shake and say things coherently. And that's the one that you should really be scared of. Because that one will not be incompetent. It will be... Every dismantling will be deliberate and methodical. And that's the right-wing president that you really have to be afraid of. But that's why you got to squish this in the butt right now and also call a spade a spade. You know, Trump is being authoritarian. Conservatives are falling further and further towards fascism. It is extremely dangerous. These people don't believe in reality. And this isn't an exaggeration. You have several literal QAnon individuals. And this is the equivalent of flat earthers, really.
Yeah.
That have...
Going to Congress.
Yeah.
I think one got elected last week.
2 or 3, I think, at this point, have gotten elected. Trump has had several white nationalists work in his White House. Like, this isn't an overreaction. This is real.
Clearly, I'm very much just disappointed, but I'm also... That convention from the Democrats made me less sure about what the outcome is going to be. I'm getting a little scared.
Well,
because not because I don't think Biden on his own can beat Trump. I think that very much is still the odds-on favorite to happen. I am just becoming increasingly concerned with a lot of the meddling. To me, the states that are so-called swing states this time around, I feel like you can count on them being, they're going to cook the books in some way because they're controlled by GOP governors.
mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, isn't it like, how's no one talking about it? We need to prepare for this. Like, the president is tweeting every week that he might send federal officers to the polling places and shut them down. Like, that's right straight out of House of Cards. He's going to try and pull that on election day. Like,
yeah.
No doubt about that. And then the post office is not even sure about whether or not most of the states are going to have their ballots delivered.
Yeah. If there's anything to be worried about, it's quite literal election tampering. The likes of which, if we had seen it in another third world country, we would have
invaded.
We would have invaded by now.
So do you? I guess the question I want to ask to wrap up this conversation: do you feel fairly confident, as you did a month ago, about Biden winning the election?
As confident? No. But I think that's to be expected. Because
the closer we get to election day,
the closer you get, it's obviously going to, what do you call it? Tighten. That always happens. It is going to tighten. The election fuckery, like just the absolute lengths they are going to just, because this is the only way conservatives win. They've been doing it for years through gerrymandering, through voter suppression,
outright theft, the election of 2000. Anybody?
Yeah, through outright just fucking stealing it. Like, but it's never been so bold and blatant. And of course, his followers don't care; they love it. And this is what I mean: the fall to fascism. They see, if you actually cared about like America and people's right to vote, you wouldn't take glee in the idea of like, haha, we're gonna steal an election. So yeah, like that stuff is obviously worse. So that's definitely worrying. I still feel like Joe Biden's gonna win. I think the hatred of Trump is pretty high. Again, people forget it really was just a perfect storm for Donald Trump. Back then, it really, really was, because
for him to win.
Yeah, because he came in at a time when people were feeling frustrated with the typical liberal order, in which shit was definitely better than it would be under a conservative, but it just wasn't. Again, moderates they're good at band-aids, but not at solutions, like full-blown solutions. So there was some level of frustration. They decided to run just the worst candidate they ever could in Hillary Clinton. Like, she's the most hated person in politics. Whether that you think it's sexism or whatever, which, I mean, yes, some of it is sexism. I 100% believe that. Still, most hated politician in the United States. Just
not named Donald
Trump, but just like everyone hates her. Everyone hates her. You had a very, very contentious primary season that left your base feeling disillusioned, really.
Which time? Last time?
Last time.
I think you meant this time.
Oh,
could have been either or,
Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. And then you had Donald Trump, who comes in and he's a snake oil salesman. The media loves him. They laugh. They think he's funny. They literally just play his rallies over and over and over from the very beginning, because it gets them views. It generates money for them. Plus, he has no record. So he just comes out and he says literally whatever the person in front of him wants to hear. And then you have the situation where people will go like, hey, well, he said the opposite of this. And they'll go, oh, no, he doesn't believe that. He actually believes this other thing he said. But then you'll find a completely different person, and then they'll say the opposite. Like, oh, no, he doesn't actually believe that. He believes this other thing. So many people were just applying their ideal version of Trump to Trump, because he had no record. So what happened is, even though Hillary Clinton, again, she did win the popular vote. She did win the popular vote because there are less conservatives in the country than liberals. But it was just the perfect storm of a million different things that handed Donald Trump his victory. He barely squeaked by.
The answer is the Democratic Party has lost touch with middle-class, working-class people, particularly working-class people. Trump tapped into that anger. They felt betrayed by particular neoliberal policies. And because the Democrats were offering more of the same, they went to somebody else who was saying, let's try something else. Because that's what their options were. And instead of trying to even address those issues, yet again, 4 years later, the nominee isn't addressing that. No one in the party is addressing that.
Yeah. Like, I will say, I'm not as down in the dumps about everything going on, I think, as much as you. And I think it's for a couple of things. I do think there was some, how should I put it, policy shown. There was some policy shown at the convention, and I think it was good policy. And it's I really wish they would lean into it so much harder and use it.
That's it, you know?
Because
that's what I'm missing.
Like they had a big old thing where they talked about climate change before Billie Eilish talked, and it's very important. It's very important, you know, for the country, the world, future generations. Very important that we address it as much as we can immediately. But like every economist will tell you, there is money to be made in doing this too. Like, there is so much money to be made. You will create so many jobs, rebuilding infrastructure, creating all these new green jobs. Like, this isn't just some pipe dream that maybe this will happen. Like, they keep saying, I read an article about how the Trump team had suppressed this findings within, I don't know, some department, that if they had built like a mega grid across the country, you know, clean energy, solar panel or whatever, if they had invested and built that it would be able to help power the entire country and also save consumers like $3 billion over some amount of time. But of course, because they're invested in oil and all that, they suppress that thing. And it's like, that's something you can bring up and hit against them, like, because it's going green is like a win-win-win. You know, you create jobs, clean energy, save
infrastructure,
infrastructure, saving the planet. Like, it's a win-win-win-win-win-win all the way around. And I really wish they would push that and push it hard, because it's jobs. You know, it's something people give a shit about. Most people are very hard. It's very hard for them to give a shit outside of their bubble. But this is something that they could give a shit about. And they did, to their credit, they did push it. But just, I just wish it would be bigger, you know? Same with like Social Security. Trump keeps lying and says like, oh, we'll protect Social Security. Like, no, they've tried gutting it several times.
I guess to me, it's, you know, usually even 4 years ago when I was disappointed with the nominee in the Democratic Party, but usually I walk away from the Democratic Convention feeling uplifted, hopeful, and pumped. This time, it kind of got me scared.
Under this circumstance, I actually think that's a great thing. Because like you were saying that you don't think that Biden and a lot of Democrats realize the fight that's ahead if and when they win. And it's true. I think they can write in like Obama and there's all this love. But no, there isn't the love. And because there isn't the love, that tells you that we will have leverage once he's in office to push, because people don't have rose-tinted goggles about the Democratic establishment now. They just need them as an avenue to save us from fascism.
I want to make one thing clear before we move on. It's not as if I disagree that the convention didn't strike the right tone. It's that, to me, I would feel much more reassured if they went even further. You know? Not to outright, like, you know, do fear-mongering, but to hit Trump hard on his specific failures. Mm-hmm. There are so many, too many of them, in fact, to name. But when you have an incumbent president, you're supposed to use his record against him. COVID's a pretty big fucking thing.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of other issues that have happened, a lot of things that he has, I mean, practically everything that he has done has been in service to dismantle the country.
Yeah. To be fair to Democrats, boomers are the ones that vote the most.
Yes.
And boomers are the ones that also care the most about decorum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like, we just want the big old meanie Cheeto president who uses bad words. We don't like that. We just want to go back to decency, whatever that means.
You know what also helps them is that I have no idea what strategy they're even employing at Trump campaign, because I couldn't get over it. I was watching this speech from early last week where he was attacking Kamala Harris, who's the VP pick. and saying that the Democratic ticket is mean and angry. He literally said those words, like, they're mean and angry. And I'm just like wondering, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? Like, who cares? Even if they were. Also, I'm sorry that I just don't know what to make of the things that he says sometimes. It's funny because it's just so weird, but
he needs to go.
Yes. So let's go ahead and move on to the official movie stuff for this podcast. The reviews for Tenet have come in for Christopher Nolan's new movie. Just to be clear, these reviews come from critics who are overseas, mainly because a lot of our critics here in the States have not been granted the privilege of getting a screener because Christopher Nolan has refused Warner Brothers, telling them, no, I don't want my cinema experience to be digitized in a disc and sent out to critics who can then review the movie. Also, theaters aren't open. And also, the movie isn't playing at drive-ins. So, a lot of stuff. But let's get to these reviews first, and then we'll get into the drama behind it. So, I have here a mixture of stuff. So, from The Telegraph, they call Tenet a delightfully convoluted masterpiece. Flickering Myth says, Tenet is a pleasurable headache. I don't know what that means. Den of Geek says, a far from perfect film, but it might just be perfect for cinema. I want to read that again. A far from perfect film, but it just might be perfect for cinema. That comes from the Den of Geek. New York Times says, seek it out, if only to marvel at the entertainingly inane glory of what we once had and are in danger of never having again. It's a interesting mix there. Those are the positives. The negative reviews. IndieWire says it is a humorless disappointment. The BBC says that it collapses under the weight of all the plot stands and concepts stuffed into it. The Guardian calls it a palindromic dud. And Yahoo, where I got these mixture of reviews from, their main analysis was that most reviews heaped praise on the spectacle and visuals of Tenet, but admitted that the film's complicated and dense plot would be a challenge for some viewers. So those are the reviews that we have for Christopher Nolan's Tenet so far, and this is pretty much what I expected. What about you?
It's actually a little worse than I expected, but I mean, I feel we have been seeing this happen with Christopher Nolan, and I think other people have been ignoring it.
For a while now.
Yeah, I really do, because there was mixed feelings on Interstellar. I enjoy Interstellar.
I agree.
And I also understand the issues with it.
Mm-hmm. It was very convoluted. Let's just be real with it. It was definitely reaching with some of the concepts. Although I do appreciate the film as a whole, I remember enjoying it very much.
Yeah. But then, what's it? Dunkirk. And it's like he's leaning in hard to all of his typical Nolanisms, to where it's literally just a whole movie of literally just Nolanisms. And at that point I was like, I'm not feeling it. I'm happy that everyone else did. Definitely well made, but it's too indulgent.
If you just think back to when we walked out of that movie, I was just numb to it. I really was. And then when we were talking amongst each other, I don't think we actually, we walked out of the theater, we went to the car and filmed the review, and we didn't really know how each other felt about it. But I think quickly we realized we were pretty much on the same page that we didn't care about it. I mean, it was... I feel like it's ambitious for all the right reasons that people are pointing it out that it is, but as you and I always say, if a film is weak on character and if you have no characters, it has a little emotional impact on me, clearly. I have another critic here, Andrew Todd. I shared this with you and I want to read his initial thoughts. He didn't want to go see it, but he did see it anyway. He said, I loved the few fleeting moments of Tenet I had any idea what was going on or gave an ounce of a shit about it. Wow, though. Christopher Nolan's first properly bad movie. All his worst tendencies utterly overwhelming his strengths. Absolutely not worth risking your health over. Can't believe Christopher Nolan ripped off the concept of his latest film from a fucking Doctor Who story. I don't even know which one he's talking about. I haven't seen the movie clearly, but I want to know because what Doctor Who concept that he stole it off from. I will say...
How the Grinch Stole Christmas?
Maybe. This is... Yeah, you and I have been feeling a certain kind of way about Tenet, about Nolan for a lot of years now. And this is just, I think, reaching, a boiling point, it seems. Although a lot of... Because even the positive reviews that I read for you are weird. Like, they come off as, like, things you say because you want to give a glowing review, but you just can't find the content. Because this is just a pleasure... Calling a movie a pleasurable headache... Calling it a delightfully convoluted masterpiece, a far from perfect film, but perfect for cinema. That's the best thing you can say about it?
It sucks because there was a point where I've never been like crazy over the moon, like, oh my God, Tenet. A lot of people have been going crazy, like, oh my God, Tenet. But it was just something where I'm like, I could rely on, like, okay, this was going to be really good, whenever I got around to seeing it. Now, I don't know. First of all, seeing just the whole issue with it has already kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. But at the same time, I really want to see a good movie and a good, like, new movie. And I was really hoping, like, I don't know, Tenet, not in theaters, obviously, but eventually when it comes out, it's like, oh, awesome, digitally, whatever, be able to see Tenet, and it'll be great. Now I'm worried that I'll watch it and then just go like, oh, Christopher Nolan's really just falling in deep into his Christopher Nolanisms, and it's starting to affect his movies. Now... Ultimately, I could end up liking it because there is a lot of times where I feel differently from a lot of the reviews that come out about certain things, certain different films. There are times when people are like, oh, it's a step down, and I'm like, nope, it's a step up. There are times where, reviewers endlessly praise a film and I walk out going, it was okay. So this one hits in that sweet spot of where most reviewers are like, kind of middle of the road, so I could end up feeling the same, I could end up hating it, or I could end up loving it. Like, there's a whole range of emotions I can end up feeling about it. But it is disappointing, obviously.
Yeah, these reviews are kind of revealing, and I think you and I clearly respond like, oh yeah, that's kind of how we've been feeling about Nolan for a while now. But I will admit, though, I wasn't terribly excited for this movie because the last one just wasn't... I didn't care about it at all. Although it did seem interesting. They all do, from the onset. But Christopher Nolan himself, I think, has kind of sunk this movie for me in terms of his comments. I feel like he has kind of become a problematic person because of his attitude about, forcing the studio to commit theatrically to his movie during a pandemic. Also, all the moves that he's making are just so, to me, terrible. He refuses to give critics screeners. He doesn't want to let drive-in theaters play the movie because it's going to mess with the experience of the film, or they're going to give away some details of it. WB, I don't know what they think this is going to do. It is the official release in the States is going to be September 4th. And theaters are open in just about every state except for 4 or 5 big ones, including California, New York, Texas. This weekend, it is expected to make upwards of $40 million at the international box office. Which
that's something.
It's something. Also, Christopher Nolan himself gets 20% of the box office from Tenet. So, he's just turned me off of this movie to the point where I'm not interested in seeing this movie succeed on any level because of his attitude.
Yeah, but if it was like really, really good, at the very least,
maybe,
like you could be pulled over, like,
right?
But it's such a good movie.
Fine, but if
it's not even that, it's like, oh.
But even if it was a masterpiece, as they say, I still wouldn't encourage at all people to go see it in the theater in any circumstance, especially here in the States. So that's kind of, and I don't know. I find that he has a really weird cult of personality. Maybe it's not that bad, but one of the articles that came out this last week in regards to the theatrical release of Tenet caught my eye, and not for a good reason. So there seems to be this internal struggle happening amongst film critics themselves about how to cover this movie, about how to cover a movie at a time where it probably isn't good for you to go to a movie. And Robbie Collin, he is a British film critic from The Telegraph. This is literally the headline of his article, and I want you to respond to this. If we want Hollywood to survive, we need to back Christopher Nolan's Tenet in person.
I don't know if that's like the cult of Nolan or more of just the cult of cinema. Like,
they could conflate.
Yeah, like people just so worried about saving the theater experience and movies, and they're so wrapped up in that they're not even thinking about the wider world implications and, hey, pandemic, lives on the line, that whole thing. And it's because people do that. Like they're so in love with whatever movies, TV, sports, whatever, that when it comes to the things that I believe everyone should believe are actually important.
Yeah.
Those just kind of fall to the wayside. And we've said this before, like, shit, like, maybe movie fans will overlook the fact that a director or an actor is abusive or accused of some heinous shit because, they're such an artist, and they don't even want to think about that because they love their movie so much. And it's like, well, no, like, that real life shit takes precedent over how much you may like their movies. So yeah, I think it's more of that when it comes to that scenario. I think it's more of just someone thinking more about the movie industry than everything else going on.
Yeah, this isn't how you do it, though. I find this disgusting. Like, there are other ways to advocate for the film industry, but this is blatantly saying we need to show up in line, and it reminded me so much of the lieutenant governor of Texas saying that we need to show up and sacrifice ourselves. We need to be prepared to sacrifice ourselves so that the economy survives. It just reminds me of that kind of mentality, and that is disgusting to me. Another horrific comment from this week that is in that line of thinking comes from the director of New Mutants, Josh Boone, whose movie is finally getting released in theaters this week in the middle of a pandemic. And he was asked about the theatrical experience and whether or not it was a good idea for that to happen. And this was his comment. He said, I don't know, man, sort of almost more magical on a movie theater. And I do think people should be going to the movies. If they can go to a house party with 700 people without masks on, they can put a mask and go to a movie and maybe get their rocks off in a more productive way.
But they shouldn't be doing the first one either. That's the thing. No one should be going to 700 people house parties with no mask. What are you, fucking crazy? Nobody should be going to any house parties. Like, the science is pretty clear. It's not that safe, like, at all. Doctors have come forward and been like, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. And I think that should be the beginning and end of it. I love movies. I love the movie experience. I love all of that. But if a doctor comes out and says, hey, this is dangerous, I'll go like, okay, sorry, I can't go. And then that's it. That's the end of it.
Well, that's the other point of view. And it's an amazing article I'm going to borrow heavily from, and I want to encourage you all to read the full length here. Mike Ryan, critic from Uprocks, put out an amazing piece that it was just so cathartic to read, because finally someone was able to capture in words what I've been thinking about this whole, theatrical thing. It is called The Moral Dilemma of Tenet, showing in theaters in the middle of a pandemic. And it discusses a lot about the fact that he was not comfortable reviewing any movie, especially Tenet, because of the circumstance that we happen to be in. And so instead he wrote this piece about why he chose not to review Tenet. And I'm going to, pull some excerpts from that article here. The thing I keep asking myself is, if I wouldn't walk into a movie theater right now, how can I cover a movie that might potentially influence someone to do that?
Yeah, it's so tough because, like, for everyone, like, this is their job.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is how they put food on the table. This is how they survive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would love to say that what you can do is, reviewers band together and say, like, hey, we're not covering new movies that are released only to theaters because immoral, blah, 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 because we don't want people to spread this or whatever. But if you ultimately have a job to do and you can be fired if you don't review this film, like, it's tough. It's really, I don't know if I can look at that person and go like, oh, how dare you review Tenet.
It is a complicated, and I'm not suggesting that. Neither are you, no one is. But it is a discussion I think that's worth having, because I think it captures a lot of at least what I am feeling. And so let me read some more off of this, and gets to his feelings about it. It's not only that I wouldn't go, but right now where I live, I can't go. New York City will not have open theaters, and Governor Andrew Cuomo recently said, I'm sure there is a whole group of people who say, I cannot live without going to the movies. But on a relative risk scale, a movie theater is less essential and poses a high risk. It is congregate. It is one ventilation system. You are seated there for a long period of time. The AV Club asked experts on infectious disease, and the conclusion was, quote, it's just about the last thing I do right now, unquote. So this is obviously a dangerous thing to do, but studios and theaters are throttling full speed ahead into the danger because, well, there's money to be made. And then one of the, I feel, more harrowing, in fact, I think the most visceral line of this article. So he is in New York, and if we recall the early days of the pandemic, that's where it got really, really bad. And he said, there's a line here where he says, having, at least as to why his mind has been affected by all of this, having a mobile refrigerated morgue, let me say that again, having a mobile refrigerated morgue truck parked a few blocks from your apartment changes a person.
Yeah.
He says, and theater chains are making a big show about how they are disinfecting everything, which only creates the illusion of safety. This is, as The Atlantic dubbed it, hygiene theater. Basically, the amount of people who contract COVID-19 from surfaces is such a minuscule number compared to how it's actually and easily spread by hanging around on particles in the air in indoor areas, like, say, a movie theater. I mean, tell me if I'm crazy, but it sounds pretty fucking clear that it's not at all safe to be at a movie theater.
No, not at all.
I'm just getting so fucking angry, and this may be the last piece of this I want to read, and this is the heart of this, and this not only speaks to the dilemma of theaters reopening, but I think it also speaks to where we are in the country. And he says, "It's been pretty frustrating watching entity after entity reopen then fail. We as a country didn't put in the work to get the numbers down, but we want the rewards anyway. Everything about this stems from a lack of leadership from the top down. What happens when with no leadership at the top is everyone else just passes the buck. The word from studios releasing movies and theaters is some form of, well, we will follow every local guideline. But there are hard-hit places with either virtually no guidelines or extremely lax guidelines. So what this does when there's an outbreak is let the theaters say, oh, well, we didn't do anything wrong. We followed all the local rules. And you're going to be seeing a lot more of that in the coming weeks, because we already saw it when bars and restaurants opened up too early. As we are seeing now, colleges are opening and then shutting down because of outbreaks. It's like everyone has to touch the hot stove themselves to be sure it's burning, and movie theaters are next in line. It's an endless cycle of, well, nothing seems to stop the virus from spreading when large groups of people get together, but I think we have figured it out. I guess I worry the most about people who don't pay attention and maybe even somewhat reasonably think, well, a movie theater wouldn't be open right now if it wasn't safe, right? Then they read a glowing review. Maybe I even wrote that review. When the truth is, right now, the people in charge certainly aren't worried about your safety. It's just a really surreal time. Because I feel that too. It's like, all right, Tenet's coming out. Obviously, it's not going to play for us because California is on lockdown, but Arizona next door. Theoretically, if we wanted to, we could drive to Arizona and go see Tenet, but we're not.
No, hell no.
I'm sorry if I'm beating a dead horse here, but I truly and honestly can't let this go. I just can't. And Peter seems bored with this conversation, so let's move on to DC Fandome, which is an event that happened on the interwebs this past weekend. And by all, appearances, it was a fairly successful thing. It kind of was shocking in some aspects to see how successful it was, but we did find a lot of information about some of their upcoming projects. And I'll let Peter decide here. Which one do you want to talk about first? We got Batman, we got Suicide Squad, we got Batfleck with, Snyder. What do you want? You endured 20 minutes of me just screaming into the ether. I'll let you pick.
Well, an hour 20.
Yeah.
I'd say Wonder Woman.
Well, yeah.
You didn't even see it, huh?
I saw it on with the sound off. Somebody was showing it.
With the sound off.
Well, I mean, it was in front of me. Somebody was talking about the trailers, and the trailer was showing. So I was like, okay, I'll watch it. It's because people were complaining about the cheetah, right?
Is there anything to complain? She looked fine. She looks like a cheetah girl.
I mean, yeah, it's about what I expected. People were complaining about the look of it, though. That's all from what I heard.
Okay. I don't know what people expected. She looks exactly like a cheetah woman would look like. Yeah. All right. It was a good trailer. It looks good. Nothing.
It
too
didn't look
exciting.
anything. It looked like the same movie from the other trailers, right? It didn't. It wasn't that much new.
Yeah. There's nothing too crazy out there. Yeah, that was Wonder Woman. I am looking forward to it, but there's just nothing. Let's do the Snyder Cut. Is it? Yeah, the Snyder Cut. Hashtag the Snyder Cut. Well, they announced that it's not a movie. It's like a 4-part miniseries, technically.
It's going to be released 4 episodes, but they also mentioned that there will be an edited piece together after it's aired on 4 nights.
That's kind of dumb, but whatever. Just do one or the other. I mean, fuck it. Martin Scorsese's not afraid to release a 4-hour movie. Just do a 4-hour movie. Like, do it. Who gives a fuck? But yeah, because each episode is supposed to be about an hour.
Yeah.
The trailer did have new stuff. It did have new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The song was very Snyder.
Very much.
Very Snyder. I am looking forward to this. This is maybe the first movie I've ever looked forward to the discourse.
Oh my god. Really? That's what you're looking forward to?
Yes. Because think about it. There's a group of people that clamored for this. Like no one has ever clamored for anything ever in their life. Like the hardcore Snyder fanboys wanted this desperately. And then you have other people that just don't. They hated Zack Snyder's vision. They hated all that. They didn't want it. And then you have so many people in between that maybe they liked some of it, then they didn't like other parts. It's a lot of different feelings along that spectrum, and every one of these people is gonna watch this because everyone's gonna want to go like, okay, for all the hullabaloo, that's all the dirt that's been kicked up about this Snyder Cut. All right, let's see it. So the opinions are gonna be very interesting because it's gonna be a very wide variety. And also I am interested to see what they cobble together and how they cobble it together.
Yeah. And
what that ultimately is. And also it is interesting just to see the two versions, maybe, right next to each other and make out what it is exactly. What it is exactly was Zack Snyder's, what was not Zack Snyder's, what was Joss Whedon's. Maybe this scene worked in this movie, but it didn't work over here. Just the comparisons are going to be so unbelievably interesting. I think it's going to be fun to watch it. Just trying to piece everything together in that way. Just the discussions, what works in this version that doesn't work in that version, this, that. There's going to be a lot. So I'm excited. And the trailer did show a good amount of new stuff. There was a bit that I've already seen because I've seen the
Justice League movie?
The deleted scenes, I mean.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So like there's certain scenes in there. It's like, okay, yes, I've known of this deleted scene. Like when the Flash saves, what's her name? Love interest.
Iris.
Love interest number 5,600. But yes, Iris. So yeah, the black suit Superman, of course. There's a lot of stuff that I've seen before. But yeah, I'm excited. And also, just to know how I feel about it. Like, will I like it? I don't know. Like, I haven't even thought about that far. I'm just
So you like that trailer?
Else. I liked how Zack Snydery it was.
Is it at all clear whether or not there were any additional scenes they're going to film for this? Is all that they have filmed with the actors all that they're going to use, and all the money that they're going to spend, like the $30 million or whatever, is that all just VFX? Is that where we're landing on that?
I think it's just new VFX. It doesn't seem like they filmed anything new.
So really, there's 4 hours worth of this stuff, huh?
Apparently.
Yeah. I want to say something. I have been very mean. I'll even call myself nasty with a lot of the things I've said about Zack Snyder over the years, especially on this show. I was very unkind to, well, let's just be clear, with Man of Steel, and especially with Batman v Superman. And, you know, I think what you and I appreciate about, at least with those movies, is that, well, we definitely don't care about them at all. There are very much his work. 100%. That's a work of art in his right, and what he's been working to do. And I'm very much sympathetic with him because of the fact that he couldn't complete that he was ripped away from that from Warner Brothers initially, and then on top of that, his daughter passed away. So he has had a tumultuous couple of years, you know, and I can appreciate that this means a lot to him personally, as an artist and as an individual, that he's able to get some sense of closure finally. And as well as the fans, you know, hey, you screamed for a couple of years and you got it, and here we go. And I'll admit, I am very much curious to see what this is going to be, because it's rare that we get the opportunities to really compare and contrast from 2 different versions of what was supposed to be the same movie, you know? So from that level, I am interested. I guess if there was a negative to be had, and let me be clear, I hate Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
That movie makes my body hurt literally every time I sit down and watch it. It hurts my brain. And then I'm sure some of them will say, well, then you weren't smart enough to understand it, or it wasn't for you. Okay, fine.
No, it's because you're not a grown-up.
Oh, okay. That's...
It was a movie for grown-ups, and you're not a grown-up. You're a child.
That's what happened, okay.
You're not mature enough.
My biggest criticism of it is, yes, it looked entirely of Zack Snyder's own creation. But it just looked like more of the same to me. It just looked like more of Batman v Superman.
Yeah, to me, the most disappointing thing I could get is watching it and going like, okay, so this is just the same movie, but like 4 hours. You know, not much has changed or anything. Like
what I could tell that was changed, the color palette.
Well, yeah. But we knew that
changed
from the beginning, because the first trailers...
Oh my god, you're right. The first trailers for that movie. Remember that? How many trailers have they cut for Justice League? I need to go back and look at them.
The first trailers were they were dark. Like they were so visually different. And then you look at just
the movie.
The trailer, not even the movie, the trailer once Joss Whedon took a part of it, and then it's like completely different. And it's like, what? Like, instead of the battle being at night, it's in daytime red. Everything's red. Like, it was... Yeah.
And ugly.
Yeah. Yeah, my biggest fear is that the film is literally just... They cut out the jokes, turn the color palette back to black, and then that's it. It's the same movie.
But longer.
Yeah, and it's like, oh man... I'm hoping, like, it does feel different. Like, there is...
But that's kind of the myth of this Zack Snyder's Snyder Cut thing, isn't it? Because, like, Joss Whedon was brought in to finish it up. Most of it was shot. There was a lot of it that he did film with the cast and everything. But like, I don't think anybody reasonably thought that when they saw Justice League, the version that we got in 2017, was bad, and it was Whedon's fault. Like, Whedon took over from Zack Snyder when he left. We know that. But
yeah,
I don't know if anything really changed in the narrative beside him tweaking the color palette and cutting some scenes out and writing some jokes in and reshoots. You know? Should we have expected Zack Snyder's movie to have been, from a narrative standpoint, vastly different than what we got?
Well, again, I think that's what's so interesting, is finding out.
Minus Darkseid, because Darkseid apparently was intended for that movie, and we didn't. And they got a whole different, like, Steppenwolf, and Steppenwolf looked different in Zack Snyder's than in Joss Whedon's, so, you know.
Yeah. But again, that's what makes it so interesting. Is this even really that different of a movie?
Yeah.
On a personal level, I hope it is. But again, even if it isn't, on a commentary level, to hear everyone's opinions,
yeah,
that'll be interesting. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
This is really the reason why I'm so excited for it, is because no matter how you slice it and no matter what it turns out to be, it's gonna be entertaining. And I'm not even talking specifically from a film perspective. Like I said, I'm talking from a discussion perspective and comparison perspective. It's gonna be entertaining. So yeah, I'm excited.
I guess another positive to this would be that Zack Snyder is finally going to be able to have a cohesive trilogy. With Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and now his version of Justice League, now there'll be like a triple experience to see one after the other. And you'll have I assume it'll be a cohesive story. Well, I mean,
oh yeah,
from
again,
point A to point B. But,
it'll be interesting to see if that's true.
So what did you make of the stuff with Forbes reporter Scott Mendelson on the day of that the trailer dropped, or was supposed to drop, in fact, and the comments that Zack Snyder made in regards to that whole thing?
I just thought they were funny. I thought they were really funny. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't... It's just dumb Twitter back and forth. Zack Snyder very much comes off like the caricature that people have made of him.
Yeah.
In that tweet. Like,
Uh-huh.
at first, when I saw that, I really thought it was a parody. I was like, oh no, this isn't real. Like, this is someone trying to make fun of Zack Snyder. And I was like, oh no, it is real. Oh fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is part of what rubs me the wrong way about him sometimes. What? This is made for grown-ups, Scott Mendelson. What? Okay. All right. It looked very adult. That's for sure.
The Justice League movie is an adult film, okay? Get your childish antics away from it. The Justice League. With the main characters Batman, Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Cyborg.
The
This
Flash,
is
too.
super serious, guys. And the Flash. He runs really fast.
By the way, no one addressed the whole Ezra Miller situation.
I mean, why would they? I don't think he came back and filmed anything. So it's just like existing
Well,
stuff.
they are planning a Flash movie. that's going to feature the return of Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's true, Ben. So I kind of want to springboard into that real quick.
Let's do it, because we haven't talked about that at all.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious they're gonna go for like who's who of the DC universe type shit. And that's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be like running through everything that's live action DC, and so it's like he's gonna run through different dimensions, and he's gonna see through the multiverse, and he's gonna see Keaton's Batman, and then you're gonna have Ben Affleck's, and then you'll probably see the Flash. I guarantee you they're gonna get the Flash from the TV show. They're gonna bring him in for some cameos and stuff like that, and then maybe even other stuff. I don't know. See if they could get the Joker. What's his name's Joker?
What, Joaquin Phoenix?
Yeah. I can see them try and pull like that kind of bullshit. That can be fun and interesting or whatever. I think it's the best part about that news is it seemed like apparently they asked Ben Affleck and he was pretty enthusiastic, like, oh yeah, totally. And I think that's awesome because that tells me he's doing better in life. Because before he just looked, he did not look good. He looked very bad.
I mean,
and he just didn't want to be there. But it seems like he's really turned his life around. So now he's
there's a reason
he's excited about Batman.
Yeah, there's a reason why that sad fleck, meme was going around when that happened, and yeah, well, hopefully it's better for him. I feel it's also obvious though that they're going to use that Flashpoint movie to erase his Batman from the DCU, whatever it's being called going forward.
They might try and use the film to like bring their different, because right now they have several different DC stuff going on, and like only half of them are technically in the same universe, and other ones are just kind of their own thing. Apparently, I read, I think on Screen Rant, I don't know, but when they were talking about the multiverse, they even included shots of like Watchmen and Constantine, the movie. So they might try to do, yes, some of these things aren't connected, but technically everything's connected because multiverse, and we're really gonna bring that into the fold with Flash and change shit up following it. I can see them doing that, especially because it seems as if they are content with going down the road of allowing certain properties to just do their own thing.
Yeah, which would include Matt Reeves, because I think they did confirm that his Batman movie and that universe is separate from the Justice League Zack Snyder stuff.
Yeah, but again, everything's technically connected through the multiverse. It's a loophole that they can technically use whenever they want. You know what I mean?
I wonder, because it seems like both Marvel and DC are going to have multiverse movies, and I wonder if they're going to come out in the same year. Because we have Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, God. And then I heard apparently, who's it, Grace Randolph, who said that...
Oh, God. What does she do now?
Grace Randolph said that Kevin Feige is trying to outdo The Flash in the whole multiverse thing with Doctor Strange. So I would assume cameos from, like, I don't know, maybe they might get Ben Affleck's Daredevil in there or Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. But I so don't want that for the Doctor Strange movie.
But I feel like they already did that with Endgame. At least that kind of feel with what they're going for. Also, like, I can see where Grace would think something like that, but if we're being real here, that script's already written. And we only just found out about this Flash movie happening this year.
You know how quickly shit can change. Grace got the scoops, okay?
Oh my god. That wasn't a scoop, though. That was purely conjecture on her part, as what you were saying, anyway. But yeah, I mean, what do you want to discuss next?
Did you see the Batman trailer?
Of course, I saw the Batman trailer.
So, what'd you think?
This may surprise you.
Oh no!
I have I have an interesting take on this whole situation. I just want to make sure I am striking the right tone and that I'm using the correct words. Because I definitely don't want to offend people here, because I know Batman is a beloved character.
Too late. Spit it out, you
Here's
bitch.
my hot take. I've never really was that attached to Bruce Wayne or Batman. I don't know if that's a surprise. I, of course, like every kid, saw some kind of Batman stuff, and he's one of the coolest looking characters ever. And so, yeah. And he throws things, and he beats up bad guys, and yeah. So that's all the emotional connection I ever had to him as a kid. And I love the movies. I particularly love The Dark Knight. And Tim Burton's Batman. The others, to a less degree. I appreciate The Dark Knight Returns and Batman Begins. Dark Knight Rises, I'm whatever on. I love.
I don't like that one.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I haven't seen it in a while, admittedly. But I don't remember hating that movie. We can do a commentary since it's coming up now on The Dark Knight. So yay!
Oh god.
I loved Lego Batman movie for what that's worth.
Yeah.
I think that one was great. I hated Batman v Superman with every fiber of my being. So if we're going to count that, but I mean, that's not really a standalone Batman movie, but it has Batman in the title. Whatever. The kind of love that I see for the character of Bruce Wayne, the detective, whatever, the vigilante in a sense. I even in the movies, I can't really say that like he's much of a character for me. Like I always feel like it was always on the edges of something that I could connect with, but never really have.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know Kevin Conroy's Batman from the Justice League animated stuff, and also the Batman the animated series, so I'm familiar with that. The stuff that I mainly loved about the Batman universe, of course, was Joker, Harley Quinn, the usual ragtag stuff that people enjoy. That being said, I hated Joker too, by the way, if anybody was interested or cared about that.
You should watch Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Okay, I'll put that on my list. But here's why I'm excited. I'm so excited about this upcoming Batman movie. Not necessarily because of Robert Pattinson. I think he's a good actor from what I've seen. And it looked great in the role.
Part of your favorite movie of last year.
Robert Pattinson?
Yes.
What movie?
The Lighthouse.
Peter came with the jokes, people. He came with the jokes.
Fantastic movie. That is not a joke. It's an amazing movie. How dare you?
I didn't call the movie a joke. I said the assertion that it was my favorite movie of last year is a joke. It's a fine film. Now, I am excited about this project because based on everything I saw in that trailer, first of all, I thought the trailer was phenomenal. But also the stuff that I heard from Matt Reeves about talking about who this character is, it gets me excited for this because I feel like I'm finally going to connect with this character on some meaningful level. And I feel like, as we've said, that I think you enjoy films a lot more if you have amazing characterization with them. And I want to be clear here. I am not saying that the characterization of Bruce Wayne in the other movies wasn't sufficient or wasn't like adequate. I just personally never connected with it. You know? I think it says a lot that the best movies that I like are Dark Knight and The Batman, because those are Joker movies, basically. You know, Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger. So that, I think, should tell you. But I'm just so incredibly happy for Matt Reeves. And he made me see this character in a way that I hadn't thought of before. And it gets me excited because he is going to be... It's clear based on everything he's saying, this is going to be a character first movie. And I would expect nothing less from him. And it looks amazing too. So I think everybody was amazed by the trailer.
Yeah. And because everyone was amazed, let me echo some of your sentiments. I'm a huge Batman fan. I love Batman. But walking away from this trailer, I came away with two feelings. One, I love it, and it's might be the Batman stuff I always wanted to see on the big screen. And two, shit's getting real oversaturated. Real oversaturated.
What's getting oversaturated?
Batman.
Oh, I thought you were saying that there was a problem with the color palette of the trailer.
No.
Sorry, I was like getting too technical there. You're saying that we have enough Batman stuff.
Not that we have enough Batman stuff. It's just like, first you had Tim Burton's Batman, right?
Uh-huh.
And it was great. Very Tim Burton. He very much made it his own.
Uh-huh.
And it's like this dark, gothic, fairy tale-like land. Interesting. Love it. Jack Nicholson, Joker, awesome. Then you had the Dark Knight stuff. Batman Begins, Dark Knight. You had Chris Nolan, and he took it in a completely different direction. Hyper realistic Batman. You know, if Batman were real, so to speak.
It was the inverse of the Tim Burton stuff, which is more fantastical in nature.
Yeah. And also dark. You know, dark, very dark. And then you've got Zack Snyder's, and it's more dark.
Yeah. Because, I mean, not just from a visual perspective, but he's a mass murderer.
Yeah.
And that rubbed you the wrong way. I remember a very infamous rant that one Peter Martinez gave way back when we were reviewing Batman v Superman. It went on for 30 minutes, I think.
Yeah, I wasn't too hot on that movie. But it's like, there were stuff though in that film that it's like there is aspects of this Batman that I've always wanted to see. I thought it had like the best suit. I really liked the Batfleck suit. I liked the fight style, you know, when it wasn't when he wasn't murdering people, but when he was yeah.
By the way, there was a lot of murder. One of the things that makes that movie to me a little bit entertaining is knowing how much you hate it and watching those scenes happen. But it's also just completely relentless how over the top it is in making sure that you know this person died.
Yeah.
Because I think some people's heads are like crushed by a fucking crate.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are literally blasted in a fiery explosion.
He literally during that car chase, he literally pulls out freaking Gatling gun, blows the car to smithereens, and then the Batmobile, poof, like right behind it, like, just so you know, there is no chance at all that anyone survived because the Batmobile rams through it and it's just like dust afterwards. And yeah, it's.
I can still remember the look on your face when that happened. I think it might have been one of the commentaries you were doing, and you were so disgusted. In that instance. But to your point, you were saying?
So we had that, and it's like, okay. And then the whole Matt Reeves thing came out.
After Ben Affleck was supposed to do this.
Mm-hmm. And it's just... It almost feels like an amalgamation of Christopher Nolan's and Zack Snyder's. So it seems like they're trying to go for a little bit more realism, but maybe not too much realism. So there is some fantastical elements to it, maybe, but it's dark, it's violent, it's, you know, very much brooding Batman, and it feels like we're at the point where every Batman iteration is just a slight remix of the previous one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's never this grand new vision for Batman. Like, going from Tim Burton to Nolan, it's like, wow, grand new vision, you know?
Yeah.
I understood why this needed to be made. But it just feels like... Don't get me wrong, I know for a fact I'm going to love Matt Reeves' Batman. But...
If not entirely because of Matt Reeves.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be real. Like, I think... Not to cut you off here, but... I think Matt Reeves is truly a treasure. I think he did amazing work with Planet of the Apes. And think about the fact that those movies were so successful from a financial standpoint, from an audience standpoint, in a time when science fiction doesn't make any money. Zip. Nada. Of course, it did have a franchise name, but they were really good. And people loved those movies. Mm-hmm. And in terms of, like, how long he's been working on this movie already, and the commitment and the rumors that we're hearing that he wants to stay on for not just this movie, but more so. To me, I just think highly. I think higher of Matt Reeves than I do Christopher Nolan. Sorry. I just do. Because especially what I think was remarkable about the Apes movies was the emphasis on character, which is why I prefer him to Nolan's approach, which is more emphasis on concept. And you're right. It does. This is very much in the post-Nolan Batman era. It doesn't look that differently from it. It is dark. It is gritty. It is, you know, street level.
Hashtag realistic. And I guess my thing is, like, if you want to know the Batman that I always wanted to see in the big screen, it's the Batman that is on the small screen, which is not the small screen sector.
Kevin Conroy?
No. Well,
No.
Technically, yes. The Arkham games. I think the Arkham games do the best job of juggling everything. So it's dark and it has its edge, but Batman is still a character. He still has his warmer side. The story's really good. The way the villains are realized are really interesting, and they are heightened. I like heightened Batman. I don't necessarily care for hyper realistic Batman. You know, right. I think it worked with Nolan's, and I really liked it there. But you see, like, the second he tries to, with a character slightly more fantastical with, like, Bane, it kind of starts to fall apart. In The Dark Knight Rises.
One aspect that I feel like, well, we'll see, but at least based on the trailer, we may see that at least the combat, the choreography of it may be better here than it was in the Nolan movies.
Yeah, but that was already made better by Snyder. This is what I mean.
Right.
Like, there's a minor. It just feels like we're at the point where there's like a minor incremental changes here and there to make it better here and there. So yeah, I don't know. I just want. My hope is I want to see, like you, I want to see the humanity of Bruce Wayne, which does exist a lot in the video games, in the comics, in the show, especially in the show. Like I said, you need to watch Mask of the Phantasm. I think you would really. Okay. It might be your favorite Batman movie. But
is it yours?
I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll rank them. But it's so rarely ever brought over to the films. It feels like the films, you have to have the gritty action scene. You have to have there's just like certain markers you have to hit to have a Batman movie, and then there's minor changes, but you never really push beyond that. And I just want to see that push. Like, one of the changes, I guess, is that it seems like it's going to be a full-on mystery detective story, which I think is really cool. Mm-hmm. I like that villains, there's multiple villains already, and they're kind of already established as far as, like, they exist and they're there. You know what I mean? Like, Catwoman is a character, she's already there. Penguin's a character, he's already there. Riddler's a character, he's already there. To me, I never understood why waste so much time building up these characters. Like, just start a film just in the middle of, an investigation. To me, I always thought the best Spider-Man would just be like, just start a Spider-Man movie with him locking up the Scorpion, these villains just are already existing and they're there, so you can just move. Like Arkham, my favorite Batman game is Arkham City, and it literally starts with Arkham City being walled off, a section of Arkham City being walled off as a prison, basically, where they throw all the criminals, and Hugo Strange is running this experimental prison where half of the city is walled off and the criminals are just let loose. And Bruce Wayne is going to go speak in front of the place, to be against it. But when Bruce Wayne goes to go speak about it, Bruce Wayne gets captured and thrown in there. So then you as Batman are now stuck inside Arkham Asylum or Arkham City, and you have to figure out what's going on, how to bring the place down, what is Hugo Strange up to. And then, like, a section of the city is controlled by Penguin and his gang, while the Joker has control of the docks and his gang, and then they've been fighting. And it's just like, no one explains these characters and who they are. You just go, into the story. And I like that, because... And Matt Reeves does seem like he's giving a lot of that, because he says it's a detective story. It's about him failing and learning. Because, you start in year 2 of him being Batman, so it's not an origin story. So it seems like that you are just being dropped into him, like, being Batman, just going. There's a bunch of villains that they're still in their early stages, obviously. Like, Penguin is still a lowly criminal, it seems, and Catwoman is still just a cat burglar. But it does seem like he's hitting a lot of the areas that I would like to see in a Batman movie. But then there's other things, and it just sounds like everything I've always heard before. Like, the suit is like, I don't know, they talk about the suit, and you know how you have like the bat gun and it's like, oh, that's so hardcore. And, this is going to be
It's the usual comments you see. It's the same things. Hardcore, badass, gritty, awesome. Yeah, that's the stuff that people walk away with. To add to what you were saying about this not being an origin story, we were just having a conversation, David and I, again, to plug our Captain Marvel audio commentary, about how in the next 10 years of comic book movies, we'd appreciate it if we just retire the whole origin story thing and just jump into it. And I think this is going to help it tremendously.
I think there's several characters. There's some characters that nobody knows about, and you kind of have to do the origin. But there's several characters
at this point.
Yeah. You never need to show their origin ever again on the big screen. Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, the Hulk, I would say.
Yeah.
There's several characters where it's just, I don't need no one needs to see it, and it sucks because people are so used to that formula. You only see certain kinds of stories from these characters.
Yeah.
And it's like there's so many other stories that these characters have, but you can never get to it because people feel the need to start at the very beginning, show the origin, and you show the same stories over and over. And it's like, no, like these characters have so much other stories to offer. You just got to skip all the usual crap and go to it. So, yeah. But that, I know I kind of came off negative, but I mean, it was an amazing trailer.
No, I think it's understandable. And you know what? Your concerns are actually making me go like, yeah, I can see that. And I think you and I agree it doesn't necessarily take away from the greatness of the trailer, but it is an issue. I hadn't thought of it, but again, you have a much different perspective on Batman than I do. You have history with this character, extensive history at that, and you notice the stuff. But it reminded me, hearing you talk about this oversaturation of Batman, it reminded me years and years and years ago when you and I, admittedly, I'll just get it out of the way with, I was wrong. I usually was wrong in those days when we would go at it, but you were talking about the oversaturation of Star Wars, and it got me in a tissy fit, I remember.
Oh, you were pissed.
But you were right. You were right. Time always seems to prove you right. So, that's kind of how you and I feel about Star Wars now. It's like especially since like with both of those franchises, they just seem to be stuck in the same kind of loop, and they're desperate on making it feel the exact same thing. Like with Star Wars, like they don't want to leave the original trilogy. They just can't.
And that's the same thing. It's like if every Star Wars movie is the same thing, but just like these minor changes here or there, it gets old. Like, I know I've said this 100 times already, but like, I'm tired of Stormtroopers. I'm tired of the Millennium Falcon. I'm tired of Rebels. X-Wings. The same shit. It's the same shit over and over and over. And I don't want to see that happen to Batman and DC. So far, they've been able to stave that off because, like I said, the Batman trailer does look good. And I'm just hoping it gets everything right, because I don't want to just come back and be like, well, it's... seventh time's the charm, like, no, just get it right this time. Just get it. Because so far, I don't think any live action version of Batman has like gotten it to where I would say like, all right, perfect, nice. Like I said, the closest that's gotten it is like the video games, the animated series.
And I feel Kyle would agree with you on that. I want to mention him because, he's a huge Batman fan. And I feel like when I was watching this trailer, that's everything he wanted out of a Batman movie the entire time I've known him. You know,
Mhm.
he's been wanting a mystery-based movie and seeing Bruce be a detective and an emphasis on him. And I just feel like this has an excellent chance at, you know, being the best representation of what we never got in a live-action Batman Bruce Wayne story.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
I really am.
It's crazy how like they're only like what 30% done filming.
That's what's so funny. The trailer said currently in production, but if that's only 30% of what they filmed, like
I know
that's pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
And I mean, just other. I could Colin Farrell unrecognizable as Cobblepot. That was amazing. The prosthetic.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
I love the. I think you can. You know what? Because Matt Reeves said that this isn't the origin for Batman, but it's semi. You see the origins for a lot of these other side characters.
uh-huh.
I feel like with Cobblepot, they're really doing a
Arc.
Who was that gangster? Capone. He feels very Capone to me. Because, like, Capone started off as, like, a hot-headed, basically goon for the mob. And then he, you know, quickly rose to being, you know, this head guy that was pretty scary and intimidating. And I feel like you're going to see that with Cobblepot. Like, that's the angle they're going to go with him in this one. He looks like he's kind of a goon, maybe with his own squad. And then through the movies, he's probably going to rise up the mob ranks, and then he's going to become Penguin or the Penguin or whatever. But no, the makeup and that shit, that looked real cool. And the voice, too. Like, it didn't sound like him either.
Now, was that... Okay, that's what I was confused. Was the voice him, or was that Riddler?
At the very end, when he's like, this guy's crazy.
Oh, okay.
That was the Penguin.
Okay. That was a cool voice. Yeah.
The voiceover of, like, in your mind's eye, or something like that. I think that was the Riddler. Because he was saying a riddle. And Paul Dano plays the Riddler, which is...
He's great.
Yeah, that's cool.
Also, Jeffrey Wright was Gordon.
That's great. Jeffrey Wright, I think, is underappreciated.
He is. Very much so. Who was playing Alfred? We didn't see him in the trailer.
Ya boy Caesar.
Andy Serkis?
Yes.
Holy fuck, how did I forget that? Oh my god, I love Andy Serkis.
He has a line in the trailer. You don't see him, but like when he enters the cave, he's like, "You're getting quite popular."
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's what gives me such hope, is that the casting is great, on top of, you know, this being driven entirely by Matt Reeves's mind, and I've seen how good it can be, and I hope he seems like he's gonna commit to this for 3 movies based on what it's looking like. So I don't know. I think this is gonna hopefully this gives Nolan's trilogy a run for its money, maybe exceeds that. But everything in this is just looking like, wow. You know, just wow.
I definitely feel like Reeves, it seems like he had a story to tell. And I think that's always the most important thing.
Yes. The twists and turns that this movie has gone through, because when this thing was first, you know, pitched, it was supposed to be directed and starring Ben Affleck. And I think there'll be a part of us, even though we didn't like his characterization by Zack Snyder, a little bit of a disappointment that we didn't get to see that Batman have his own movie, at least. Because Ben Affleck, I think, legitimately was great in the role.
Ha ha ha.
Oh my god.
They need to bring him back.
They're not. They're never. Would Jared Leto even agree? I mean, at this point, like, they've treated him horribly.
They've treated him like shit. It's okay.
I don't know what's like the biggest insult is that the movie that he was given bombed so hard because of WB's own interference for the most part. And then the movie that was supposed to be his, they give it to somebody else, and that movie makes $1 billion and wins an Academy Award for Best Actor. I mean, talk about like the worst possible situation.
It's okay. He's got that Tron money now.
Sure. I'll believe it when I see it. I don't know if they're really going to move forward on that, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Suicide Squad.
Yes. Yes. Suicide Squad. Now, did you see both videos they released?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so they had a cast list announcement, and they also had a sizzle reel from the filming of it.
Thoughts?
This, I think, might be from a quality standpoint, this sequel might be the single greatest recovery in the history of cinema. I hated Suicide Squad. Like, and I know I just said that I hated BVS, but there are parts of BVS that I can respect. I thought Suicide Squad was an abysmal disaster. I don't think there's any disagreement about that. Yeah, it was. Ugh.
That was something else.
It was bad. It was bad. Let's be real. It was bad. But ever since James Gunn was attached to this project, the Suicide Squad now, I've been all in because I love James Gunn as a creator. I feel like you see. He's one of those filmmakers that you get to know by watching their movies. And that's what I got from the Guardians films. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, when more and more of the cast was announced, and it became one of those projects where the more and more people attached to it, you hear from them, more and more excited you get for it. And the fact that he was like going all in about, you know, going into C-listers and D-listers of the DC Comics villains pantheon. Like, it just seemed like all of the stuff that we were seeing from a casting perspective looked as if that's what the Suicide Squad should have always been from the first place, you know? And I feel with what we got as far as, like, those two individual videos, it's exactly what I expected and then some. I think this may be the most excited I am because, like, especially with the cast announcement video that they released, I was just screaming, like, "Oh my god, this looks like it's that thing where it's like so ridiculously over the top, but it works." I mean, I still can't get over the fact that Sean Gunn is playing Weasel. I didn't even know there was a character called Weasel. I guess there is, and he looked amazing. Well, Michael Rooker, Nathan Fillion, Peter Capaldi.
Ooh, and he plays the Thinker. So you know he's gonna be a pretentious dick.
In which he's amazing at that. If you've seen in Into the Loop and The Thick of It. But like these characters, who the fuck are they? I mean, I don't like Polka Dot Man.
Oh, you put respect on Polka Dot Man, okay.
I mean, this is really going into the concept of basically these C-listers, these losers, but pretty much for the most part.
The most interesting thing about the Suicide Squad, the premise, the comic book, has always been you take these characters that were created and like these one-off issues a long-ass time ago, like these nothing throwaway supervillain characters that are just crap, just crap. You find them in Spider-Man Batman or Superman number 161 back in the 1970s. There was a couple issues where they showed, I don't know, the Wheeler, and he rides around in wheels. It is just terrible. So you get the Suicide Squad, which is literally the premise is so much fun, where of course, they have bombs in their freaking brains. Amanda Waller, who's a stone cold, who's like, I got some probably illegal mission that you need to do for Uncle Sam. if you see you Z-listers, C-listers, D-listers can pull it off, you get some time reduced off your sentence, you go free, whatever. But you guys will most likely die. And it's the Suicide Squad. That's what's so fun. Because with comic book characters, so much is like, okay, well, this character's never going to die. This character's never going to die. This character. Look at the MCU killed off half their characters and still none of them died. How do you do that? I don't know.
They did.
Killed off half of the whole universe and still none of them died. But with Suicide Squad, not only can they die, it is expected that they die, and
not in that first movie though.
That's what I mean. All of the like most fun, interesting aspects of what makes Suicide Squad so fun, we're just not taking advantage of in that first film. But with James Gunn, because especially if you've seen his earlier movies, oh my gosh, he has a fucked up kind of demented sense of humor that is perfect for the Suicide Squad. He is not averse to gore, so poor Polka Dot Man is, I don't know, well, what's his name in the video? The Javelin was saying like there's heads exploding, genitals explode, like he was saying all this shit. But it allows for twists and turns. And again, to just experience these terrible fucking characters, but in the most fun way possible. Like, this is the one area where you want the lamest villains.
Yes.
Because
that's the joke.
That's what makes it so fun. Like, it made me sad that there isn't a Marvel version of Suicide Squad. Where you can get the lame ass Marvel villains and do this.
Would it even matter? Because Disney?
Yeah, I know. But this is an edge. Again, this is another edge where DC can reign supreme and go, like, you guys don't even have Marvel. You guys don't have anything close to this. And you can't go rated R. So DC, awesome job, play to your strength. And they did. They got not only did they play to their strength, they played to their strength while poaching their crown jewel, James Gunn. After they so stupidly threw him to the wayside. And he rebounded hard with DC. It's a Cinderella story in my book.
It really is. And it's like the joke with Suicide Squad. I remember you and I were talking about this back in the days at the BNC when we were in the ramp up to this movie being released, but like we were all like, oh yeah, well, Suicide Squad was clearly DC's response to Guardians of the Galaxy. And then lo and behold, years down the line, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy is now doing the Suicide Squad. and you see in the sizzle reel, and his excitement and the way he talks about it, and it's like, man, why didn't they get him to do the first movie? I mean, thankfully not, because they would have fucked with it clearly. And
that would have been
image.
That would have been bad.
And it was, yeah.
Luckily, in the end, it probably played out for the best. We will.
The best get possible way.
The good Suicide. Not only
and
the good,
we still get
we still get Guardians 3.
Yeah, Guardians 3. Yeah. I just want to quickly run down just in case people don't know. So Margot Robbie is back as Harley Quinn. Introducing Idris Elba as Bloodsport, John Cena as Peacemaker. Oh my god!
I'm really excited for that one.
Joel Kinnaman returns as Rick Flag. Peter Capaldi as the Thinker. Viola Davis is back as Amanda Waller. Jai Courtney is back as the Boomerang, Captain Boomerang. Alicia Braga as Sol Saria.
What? Wait, I've never heard that one.
Sol Saria, a South American revolutionary and an ally. Okay.
She's always playing like a freaking, I don't know. She's always playing that character, that actress.
Pete Davidson is Blackguard.
He's dead in 2 seconds, right? Like,
I mean, how... I think that's why it's so much fun that this is a large cast, because half of them are going to die for sure.
Oh, yeah. And it's going to be fun the ways they die.
David Dalmatian as Polka Dot Man, or Dalmatian, whichever. Michael Rooker. I love Michael Rooker as Savant. Savant, a computer hacker. Okay, that's all the description says. A computer hacker. Taika Waititi is in this, but no one knows what he's doing. But he is credited in this. Nathan Fillion, arm fall off boy. Are you kidding me? That's a character. Arm fall off boy?
Fuck yeah. How does that not make you excited?
A supervillain who can detach his arms for use as weapons.
That's just awesome.
Storm Reed is here as Tyla, Dubois's teenage daughter. Daniela Melchior as Ratcatcher 2. Ratcat, okay. Steve Agee is here as King Shark. King fucking Shark, wow. Sean Gunn as Weasel, a terrifying half rat, half man. Sean Gunn is going to go down in history as being the best character actor for rodents in the history of cinema.
He's amazing. He is to rodents what's his name was to monkeys.
Oh, Andy Serkis. Joaquin Cosio as Mateo Suarez. Juan Diego Botto as Silvio Luna. And Malin. Who's Mongol? Mongol, an alien, an ally of the new Suicide Squad.
I was going to say, I think she's an alien.
Uh-huh.
Which, that's cool.
This is kind of the best win-win, and hopefully both do come out in 2021. And you and I have been calling this for I think a year and a half, maybe more so at this point, that this is going to be the checkmate to punch Marvel in the dick, because this is the best case scenario, because you couldn't have two better films that are so opposite in tone, but look far better than anything Marvel will give us, it seems like. I mean, wow.
But with these few trailers, I'm just so much more excited with DC than Marvel right now.
I'm not excited for Marvel, aside from the ones that we've already discussed, Taika Waititi, James Gunn, and Sam Raimi. That's it.
And even then, the news that they said about with Doctor Strange makes me go oh.
What news?
I told you about how they...
That wasn't news. That was conjecture. That was speculation. There has been no official reports.
Don't you dare doubt Grace.
There have been no official reports. She just said something and it got your mind going. I'm telling you, that movie, it very well could be changed. And they have plenty of time for it. But at least as far as I'm aware of, there's no way they could have said, oh, well, we'll use this to counter Flashpoint. I don't think that's going to happen. She proves the
haters wrong every time. That's all I'm saying.
I know people can't see us, and maybe it's hard to tell from Peter's point of view, but that was sarcasm, if that wasn't clear. It is interesting to see James Gunn. He looked so happy in that sizzle reel, and he kept saying this is the best cast I ever worked with in my life, and I'm like, wow, okay. I'm sure he just said that for the PR, but okay. Best cast you ever worked with?
It's a good cast.
It is.
It's a very good cast.
I'm sad. The one thing I am sad about is what happened that we couldn't have gotten Dave Bautista in this movie.
Yeah. I wanted some Bautista.
Because Dave went to bat for James Gunn.
He did. I was really hoping that we could have got some Bautista bomb in this, but I guess not. Maybe Suicide Squad 2? Or technically 3? Maybe he was working on Dune.
One of his other movies that he's doing. There could have been Dune. He does a couple of comedies. So maybe he was busy.
Credit to him. He's been saying he really wants to do more serious acting.
Uh-huh.
Which I think is cool. That's why I'm glad that he's appears to have struck up a repertoire with Denis Villeneuve.
Well, even in the small in the few years he's been an actor, I think to me, I remember him in even the small roles. Blade Runner 2049, he was amazing. That one scene, also Spectre, as just like the muscle, basically. So I think he's great, and when utilized right, I think he can be pretty fucking. I mean, I remember those roles, and I mean with Spectre, I don't think about all too often. I do like that movie, but he was one of the reasons why I like that movie. But yeah. No, I mean, I think overall, if there is a summary about all of this stuff with DC, is that they have a lot of promise. And finally, for the first time, since you and I have known each other, Peter, it seems as if it's actually going to happen and that it's actually going to be good with what they're promising to deliver.
Yes. It's been so long.
I know. Well, it's been like, what, 5 years now? We've been waiting for something like this because, I mean, we're always going to look back at on the 2010s as just what a joke they were for years and years, like fumbling, tripping over themselves just to get a film made.
Yeah, they were so indecisive, and then every decision that they did make was just dumb, which led to more indecisiveness. Just if you're indecisive, pick a really good director and then just let them do whatever the fuck they want.
And that seems as if what they've decided to do, and that could be one of the reasons why they are going to be, in my view, supplanting Marvel, because they're going to be very director driven.
I'm looking forward to it.
And that's something that I'm hopeful Kevin Feige would one day do, but he only lets some of them do.
Yeah.
Like Taika Waititi's Thor: Love and Thunder, that's going to be amazing. Of course, James Gunn's going to be great. So I have every faith that those two movies are going to be great. Which theoretically they should all come around at the same time, right? Like in the same of a year, like so Batman, Suicide Squad, Thor: Love and Thunder.
We don't know because every movie that was supposed to be released this year is getting pushed to next year. It's going to be a clusterfuck for a while. I wouldn't try and figure it out anything right now.
It's just a waste of brain cells.
Yeah.
Do you feel that they're going to release Black Widow on Disney Plus, like Mulan, or that all depends on how well Mulan does?
If it all depends, and then also how pissed they are willing to make exhibitors. Yeah. Because Disney,
they seem pretty pissed at Mulan.
But Disney might go like, "Hey, fuck you! We were the ones that bring in the big bucks anyway, so we can do what we want." But yeah, it all depends on how Mulan goes.
Yeah. Overall, a very well run event. A lot of wonderful material that was released, and to me, I think at the end of the day, and I feel you largely agree with this as well, this DC Fandome event was a turning point. At long last, it seems as if they have their shit together.
Yay.
And mind you, Peter and I have been talking about movies since 2015, 14 now? 15?
Quite a while, yes. 15, I would say.
Yeah, I think it was 15. And, yeah. So, I think we're going to call it a day there. Peter, thank you for joining me. And I want to thank all of you for listening to this podcast. I want to remind you that we have upcoming episodes based on The Legend of Korra, as well as audio commentaries, and Fantasy Fair, which will feature a lot of documentaries, or so it seems. Every Thursday and or Sunday under our big red spotlight. And until next time, bye-bye.